Mango Bay, Mango Bay.
Mango Bay.
Mango Bay, Mango Bay, Mango Bay, Mango Bay, your Mango Bay.
For the exclusive content, don't forget to join our Patreon at patreon.com/MangoBay. Mango.
Bay. This is the Mango Bay podcast. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi. What's up? We are the one-stop shop for South Asian recklessness.
What's going on,
We are
guys?
two best boys who are brown comics in New York City.
I think we are literally the only funny brown people on Earth. Okay, so yeah, take it or leave it. Subscribe to the Patreon, guys. You know what it is. Give us 5 stars, first of all, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. And yeah, subscribe to the YouTube.
There's many things happening on the fucking Patreon, dude. There's just so much exclusive shit. There's so much
early access.
Dude, it's illegal now.
Bonus episodes.
Basically, how much shit is on
20
there.
hours of bonus eepisodes.
Just a cavalcade.
True cavalcade of content,
Sure,
cascading
sure. There we go.
down.
A fusillade of fun. This is how my history book used
This is
to
like a
be
1950s gossip rag, all the alliteration.
Here's
you
a lot
know?
of fun. Can you dig it? You can dig it, and you will. All right?
We got hours and hours and hours of bonus content, early access to content, and a lot of other cool things coming down the pipeline with that. We're talking live episodes, stuff like that. Also, you guys will be comped for tickets to our live shows. So
Boom.
just keep that in mind. Definitely subscribe to the Patreon. We're here today with a very special guest. Let's introduce him really quick. Bhaskar Sunkara, very, very smart, fun guy. I want to get into how I met Bhaskar and my first interaction with him, which was embarrassing on my part. Great guy, editor, publisher of Jacobin Magazine. Are you also the editor-in-chief?
Yes, I'm the editor and publisher.
More of a writer, this guy.
Yeah.
More of a writer.
And publisher of Jacobin Magazine. We're going to get to it with him in a bit. Before we do that, Usama, what do you got for me this week?
Jungly Story of the Week, where we talk just some wild shit that happened, dude. So basically, I got like a 40 millisecond role in Sex and the City.
It was a big role.
It was a role. It was
a very
the
prominent
driving
role.
plot of the scene was my role. I was a loud guy who was basically being rambunctious.
Can I impersonate your role on it?
Go for it.
It's like, first class! First class! I don't care where I'm going. I'm not getting off this plane.
Why you made me like a
I don't know. I don't know.
I ain't getting off this plane.
I don't know why. I made you a little blacker than you are.
I ain't getting off this motherfucking plane.
But I just like, how do I get more emphasis? How do I get more emphasis? I was like, okay, go into it.
It's you made me redneck because I was wearing a Tom of Finland jacket.
Right.
By the way, which is the most left-wing thing in history. So yeah, I was Foghorn Leghorn Black Edition, of course.
You were like a rambunctious millennial.
yeah, loud guy on the stoop, annoying Carrie Bradshaw, the main character of Sex and the City, because I was being so loud outside. So it was a wild thing.
My thought about that was that wasn't scripted, and that was actually literally you just interacting with extras, and then they're like, let's just capture this guy and make a scene out of it.
That's how good I am at acting. No, because those lines are terrible. They're not even really good lines. I had to make them what they were.
You made them good.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't seen, what is it called again? And then there was
and then there was none. It was
something like
Agatha
that.
Christie,
it was like it was something weird. 10 Little Indians.
And
what is
just
it called
like
again?
that, there were
like,
nothing.
And
yeah.
just like that.
And just
right?
like that.
I tried to watch that show first of all really quickly. I like took an edible, bad idea, and I was like, let me watch this.
Terrible.
And it was like the saddest,
Worst
most depressing thing ever.
Dude, I couldn't get to my own scene.
Dude, don't say worst show. They might have you back on.
Oh yeah, it's the worst show.
It's the best show.
It's the worst show.
It's a great show.
I can't lie.
It's
a fine show, but people are hating on it because of fan service. It's a new show that's a reboot. Shit's going crazy.
Yeah, not as funny as the original. I was a huge fan of the
very
original.
funny fucking show, the original one. So what happens after that fucking role? Of course, every time something good happens in my life, a bunch of white female molesters comes through the fucking hill.
Coming out the wood.
Just you can see them like coming out of the a Thriller video, and they're like, "I need your balls." And so I'm at a show, and then for that day, they introduced me as like, hey, you might have seen this guy, as the guy from Sex and the City, and then I could see like the energy change because now it's like a bit of fame, right? And you see how it changes just the texture of the room. I walk up, bro. There was like a lady in the front, like literally just like doing this. Like the entire show.
that?
I don't even know,
What is
dude.
that?
Fame, dude.
It's like a tick.
In their mind, fame, bro, they don't even become people anymore. They become almost like not even real. So like, as I was doing the joke, she kept going like,
Oh, like purr,
She was
like
purring
a
or
cat's,
something.
like,
but she was really maybe
like
even
cat claws?
as I was getting close, she was maybe like swiping for my balls or something. Who knows? I don't know. This is a new level of kind of mini fame that I have gotten to, and now these ladies are like, after the show, I'm hanging out. This girl again just fucking squeezed my butt. I'm sitting on the butt. I don't even know how she found my butt. I'm sitting on a stool. I don't even have a big butt.
And you're skinny too.
I have no butt. She went underneath.
She found it.
She went to the.
She went in like a proctologist, found the butt,
like straight up,
and explored it.
Doctors in the office today.
Yeah.
And you just like, and then I look and she's like walking away.
Oh,
and I don't know.
So that was like an assault.
It was an assault.
That wasn't like, hey, let me try and court this guy awkwardly.
This wasn't,
that
hey,
was
what's
like,
up? And
let
then
me grope this
come
guy.
on in. And hey, wouldn't it be crazy if we took our clothes off? It was like, hey, squeeze. Anyway, you look great, tiger. And then walks out. And I don't even know if that's the phrase that white people use. But this is just for like a 30-second roll.
It was very prominent.
Yeah.
You looked good.
But here's the thing, I did. But here's the thing, is like, imagine if you're like a second, like a star, like the main, or even a supporting, or even you have more than 2 scenes. What happens? If this is the level for like 1 scene.
Listen, even with just Mango Bay, there are sometimes you'll meet people.
Right.
Like I had a show at like the Stand a few weeks ago. And there's these 2 girls there, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then they just kind of come out. They're like, we thought you were really funny. I'm like, thanks. And then one was like, we're sisters. And I was like, okay, cool. And she's like, she came to see you. And I was like, oh. She's like, yeah, I'm Mango Bay Podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like a new fan, and I came specifically to see you. And I was like, this is deeply uncomfortable, actually.
Right.
It felt invasive in a way. And I'm not nearly at the level you are of stardom, I've got, 6K on IG? It's
coming, though. It's coming.
You're like 56... You're
I'm
out
there.
there.
We're both going, but the idea, the vibe's already there.
You have to deal with a lot more. I don't even know how you deal with it at the volume that you deal with it now.
I just bend over and
you
say,
just take it
have
at
at
this point,
Bertha. You know what I'm saying? Get party on. Excellent. Well, but here's the thing: is like I'm a fetish, becoming fetishized in a way. But also, I'm like, I'll get mine, that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
No, I get it. And I did, of course, sleep with that woman because I was like, let me take this crumb, and yes, of course.
Of course.
Every time it happens, I do.
And it's like, dude, like, if a white woman's going to finger you, you're getting fingered.
You made that sound like such a proverb. If a white woman's going to finger you, son, you're getting fingered.
That was Confucius, I think, back in the day. The river runs east and the finger runs north into your butt. It's just like, dude, these people are not even real. They're just like specters of humans when they interact with you.
Yeah.
They're not bringing their humanity into this.
Well, what is it about you and them where their first instinct, because this has happened to you now several times, where their first instinct is to try and peg you?
And dude, I guess my butthole
as opposed to like grabbing you by the dick or something.
My butthole is probably, that suitcase in Pulp Fiction where you open it and it's light coming out?
Yeah.
That's what I think my butthole is. It's
got the Holy Grail. It's got the Holy Grail inside.
Yeah, something is there for these white people. And you know what? Keep trying. All right? The race is on. That was my jungle story. Literal assaults.
More assaults.
More assaults. And just what I have feelings.
I mean, guys, let's not just make the. Yeah, I feel like this isn't even comedy
Don't
anymore.
Rape me.
Guys, can you stop assaulting my boy?
I'm the opposite of the Nirvana song. Don't rape me, please.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, just leave him alone, guys. Leave him alone. Okay.
Unless you're like hot as fuck.
Huh?
Okay. Like if you're hot.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Is it?
If you're not hot, look in the mirror, ask yourself, are you hot? And then act accordingly.
I mean, yeah, that's an unreasonable expectation because the people who do this kind of thing don't have a lot of like self-awareness.
They're not even lucid.
With.
Yeah,
they're not like all that like aware, So it's like you can't ask very much of them except for just no.
Yeah, I don't even understand what's going on. I don't think white people have optic permanence at this point. They're just like husks and just like, living off id. I swear to God. But anyway, that's my more to come. More sexual assault stories to come.
Hopefully not.
The people are rabid out here. That's what the idea of the story was, that it's just wild out there, even for small, tiny roles.
Has anybody like industry-wise ever tried to sexually harass you?
No. Tried to fuck once, but not.
Yeah.
JFL. That was
right.
Those Canadians.
Don't
Don't be fooled. They got dicks right there between the legs.
This is like a Punjabi Toronto person.
Dude,
That's what I'm hearing.
I've never been an accent guy.
You have always been the accent guy. I'm the guy who fucks up the accent.
You're way better at accents than I am, dude.
Dude, how did this?
That's untrue.
Listeners,
my God, don't you know?
Rewind back to the episodes where you're making fun of my accents all the time.
Sure.
Like whenever I try to do Arab and it turns out Irish.
There's no callbacks. It's all the jokes in the moment. If something sounds stupid now, we say it now, right?
You're the accent guy.
Shut up. Anyway, that was Jungle Story of the Week. Quick one of the week.
Let's talk about this. I want to talk about this really quickly because we're talking about Subhah Chandra Bose, aka Netaji, however you want to call him. This was one of the big dogs
Bengali.
of the Indian freedom movement, right? He was a hardcore Indian nationalist. This guy, they just erected a statue to him in Delhi. People in
He's
India,
my favorite Nazi, I think, out of all the Nazis.
because he's Bengali. You know,
a lot of communist
he's Bengali.
tendencies.
Yeah.
Was he a Naxalite or was that
No,
after?
no, he's not Naxalites are like
Way
tribals.
later.
That's a whole different thing.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, no, he's that's
But
nothing related.
he acted like pretty fucking intense. He was a very like in your face guy.
Well, Bose was a Bengali guy, right?
Okay.
Obviously, he was like pretty.
Okay.
Just putting that out
Okay.
there.
I don't know what that meant.
If you know what enough
I
said.
don't know what that was about.
Enough said. Look, he was a Bengali guy, fairly privileged dude,
Yeah.
got involved in the freedom struggle, and he was like more of the hyper-nationalist strain of the movement.
Reformed the
right?
military, I believe, right? The Indian.
Well, he formed his own Indian National
right,
Army,
which is some
right?
Alex Jones shit.
And
you know?
his whole claim to fame and why he's kind of has a little bit dirt thrown on his memory, definitely from a Western perspective, is that he went and sought out the help of the Axis powers. We're talking about the Nazis. I think he met Hitler,
Yeah.
and then eventually ended up collaborating with the Japanese to form the Indian National
Right,
Army.
but here's the thing: he met Hitler, and he the second part is that he walked out of the office like pretty cool guy,
he's like,
pretty chill.
he's like that guy's
That's
kind
the
of
second
he's
part you
like
forget.
that guy's kind of a pussy.
Yeah, can't go a real mustache.
Not
huh?
really
Have
committed.
you seen the mallus we have down there? Come
Listen, hold on. First of all, we have to talk about the fact that like Indians are still the only people left on Earth who will still rock the Hitler mustache.
Still-
now, they're a dying breed,
and we're
granted.
good.
But I've definitely had some uncles who Bhaskar.
And Michael Jordan.
And Michael Jordan. It's true.
on. Michael Jordan.
true.
Yeah, Michael Jordan has like this weird patchy like Hitler
Yeah,
stash.
it's true. It's because his dad had it too. I think it's like an homage to his dad. Very true, actually. Michael Jordan does have the Hitler
Oh, my
stash.
God, that's
It's an
hilarious.
unusual choice.
Okay.
In general, like it's hard to see what the appeal is because
Yeah.
you think of a mustache of virility, you want it bigger, puffier. But this is like no, this
I
is
get
like
it.
a little.
I get it.
It's like a furry little clitoris on top of your
think of
mouth.
the wordplay, the final solution, the last dance.
The-
It's the same.
That's very
thing.
true.
It's the same
It's-
thing.
it's-
Think about it. Fuck!
It's very true. Very true. Bose, I think is though is that he is beloved in India. And here's the thing. Here's
People
what I
in
don't
Japan
like.
too. Japan loves the
People in Japan love him. Here's the thing that I don't like is I don't like it when people. Because listen, India. Why are Indians going to be like pro? Obviously, they're going to be like the enemy of our enemy is our friend.
Sure.
Like to me, it's a very natural thing to seek out. Possible allies against the British when you're trying to kick the British out of the country. He wasn't the satyagraha guy. He wasn't the peaceful guy. He wanted a militaristic solution. He wanted to kick them out. So who are you going to go to? Look,
Right.
we can't deny the fact that Churchill offed fucking 3 million or so Bengalis.
No,
okay?
for sure.
In a
Famine
fairly
shit.
orchestrated
but
famine.
here's the thing: it's like he was misguided, bro. I think the guy was probably so charismatic and so like, yeah, I'm gung ho about shit that. Like German people were like, yeah, we're for you. And weren't they planning an invasion?
No, the thing is, like, it's not like if the Nazis coming into India would have been good.
Because
that
they
would have
said
been
they
way
were for
worse.
it, but then they were planning an invasion while they said like, go Indians. So I don't know about if he was like caught that or something.
It's like, look, my point is this, though. I don't like it when people are like, he was a Nazi sympathizer. Like, Nazis mean the same thing to Indians in India at that
Right,
time
right.
as they do now in
Sure.
2022 to us in America.
Well, a subjugated nation should not take part in a war, period. So even if we think that as flawed as the UK and US and Soviet Union were, they were obviously much better than the Axis. That's common sense. Everybody knows that. Indians took part in great numbers in that struggle, so therefore they're on the right side of history, but they took part as a subjugated people.
Sure.
So if the British gave independence or the Indians took independence before World War II, then they hit us up for help.
We would have been
yes,
right,
think about
maybe,
it.
right.
Yeah,
right.
Or maybe not. Like Ireland, which just had got independence, decided not to take part in the war. They were given all sorts of promises of things that were going to be done. Maybe we'll even leave the north of your country or whatever else. They told the leader of Ireland at the time. And he said, no, we're just going to be strictly neutral. And when Hitler shot himself in the bunker, Ireland put out a little communique saying, we're very sorry about the loss of Hitler. It's a perfunctory, so it's like a perfunctory thing that embassies put up whenever a head of state dies.
Sure.
And
That's hilarious.
Yeah, Ireland just put, and this is like, the war is over.
sent
This
flowers.
is like a good, like, F you, like, hey, by the way.
They said flowers and
That's
like an
hilarious.
arrangement.
But the official communique had the word bloke in it. You know? He seemed like a nice bloke.
Yeah.
Saying, like-
Yeah, but in this case, okay, what would have happened if the Japanese had successfully invaded India? They would have set up a puppet state. And honestly, the Japanese military was just as brutal
They were
as
gnarly
the
as
German
hell.
Sure.
They were
military.
really fucked up.
At that time as well, right? At that
Yeah,
specific time.
and also he was fighting local British Indian Army troops. So he was fighting mostly other Indians. I think the correct answer would have been non-participation. Agitate among Indian troops, saying we're not going out there until you give us independence. We're not participating in this war, and we're rooting for the defeat of both sides, basically.
Right.
You know, and not taking
100%.
part. Yeah.
He
was
But
like
it definitely wouldn't be pro-British. There's no moral universe where Indians should have shed blood for the British
agree.
Empire.
And what annoys me is like I have like cousins and stuff who are they're like our grandfather, not my grandfather, but they're like, well, so and so and we were proud that they fought in World War II alongside. And I'm like, you should not be fucking proud of that, dude. Like there's nothing to be. Yeah, I mean, what is to be proud of about that? You weren't fighting for India. Like fucking large numbers of Indians died in that conflict. There's no fucking monuments to them anywhere. Nobody gave a fuck about that. They were literal cannon fodder. They were literal cannon.
My dad still is like, they built the railroads, those guys did. I'm like, Dad, what the fuck is this, dude? Do you think that was just for us? Hey, guys, good on ya. Enjoy them.
I was some people like, we built you guys railroads, and it's like you did that to steal shit easier. It's like being like, hey, rape victim, I introduced you to lube. Like, no.
But also, I think we should even keep it simple. Like, there is no right of a strong country to subjugate another country. They could have literally did good in India.
Right.
But if they did it without the consent of the Indian people, then it's bad.
Good.
You know, there's no need to dissect whether or not it's good. I think sometimes Indians go in the opposite direction of, like, my dad's line is we were this thriving great power. We had our industry. We did this.
Right.
Everyone would come here. Zero. We invent. Whatever. All things are true. But he had this narrative
like ancient
like,
India.
Right.
Yeah, but he blends it all together. Like, everything was better before the British. I think the real truth is the British colonial experience had some material positives and also lots of devastating negatives, but we don't need to assess the balance sheet because it was wrong, because it's more wrong as a moral and ethical level. Imperialism is wrong, subjugating people.
Exactly.
And India might have figured it out the way Japan figured it out, become a great power without imperialism, or it might have floundered and been like a shithole, but that would have been up to the Indian people to determine that destiny.
I just almost find it so patronizing though when British people are like, we gave you guys railroads, mate, and like this and that. It's like as if like a culture wasn't developed, that's already very old, right? Wouldn't have been developing technologies on their own or by their own right, or couldn't have interacted with technologies and been able to, like, the only way we were going to get this was by you forcefully subjugating.
Indians don't have eyes, they don't really have ears like that.
I mean, the whole reason you came over here was because you knew this place was fucking lit,
Like,
it was rich as hell. I mean, it's, we've talked about this plenty on the podcast before, but it's like, it's never a good argument. Railroads.
And also countries can catch up. Like, the Japanese were a thoroughly backward country. They just had the benefit of being an island, so they could keep people out. Then they saw the technology going on, and they copied all the good stuff. And they built, like, obviously it went bad. They decided to conquer the world with it. But they built themselves to the point that they defeated Russia, the largest army on earth, in 1905. They were this great power of the world.
Was that the first defeat of a Western power? Was Japan on Russia, right?
Yeah, first defeat
in Korea,
of
that?
Yeah. In not only Korea, Manchuria, and also that little
Sakhalin Islands,
whatever that
Sakhalin.
Yeah, there's that other one, so it's like K. It's like
someone played Tsushima recently. Huh?
Now it's all Russian because they tried. They got half of it in 1905, and they're like, shit, let's just take the rest of.
Are you dealing with this kind of history when you're in your job, or you're all current events? You're not doing.
So because we're socialists, we're stuck in the past. So history is very much like, part of a lot of what we think about. And also, like, again, like, coming to it with a perspective that's like, I think nowadays so many people want to use history so explicitly politically,
of course,
that I think like the most important thing is to like understand it. So my dad comes from the kind of like Congress Party generation of like basically left nationalist Nehru, Gandhi, and Indira Gandhi is his favorite.
Whoa!
Whoa!
Yeah, okay,
100%.
I don't know about that.
100%. He and for him, like picking and choosing narratives from history is a way to like embody a broadly progressive, but not like a granola crunchy progressive, but kind of a national liberation. Like, I like Nasser, I like Tito,
I like
that whole era. Nehru, I like a kind of like whatever.
There's a type of Indian uncle that loves that.
Yeah, exactly. He's the Indian uncle.
That guy at the party is
but
always
all
there.
it really amounts to is just nostalgia, though. You know what I mean? It's about a time that they were in their prime and they were coming up and they were young, and these are the leaders that were around. And it was an exciting time in a way, because it's like, where are these countries going to go now?
But there is something about, my dad's Hindu. My uncle who shares this view with him, I have many uncles, but this is the only one who's still clung hard. Like, even them clinging hard to like the Congress Party today is about them saying their primary identity is as Indians, right?
Right.
And they're viewed towards like Muslims or Christians is like not progressive necessarily. It's like more paternalistic, kind of
course,
like,
yeah.
hey, we'll take care of them.
Of course.
Why these people giving them a hard time? Whatever. They butcher the meat. We never would touch the meat,
Right.
but they would butcher the meat, and we would eat meat once a week, and the
Yeah.
nice Muslim guy.
Why are you fucking with our meat handlers?
Yeah, exactly.
It's still the caste shit is in play.
Yeah, exactly. And Jesus Christ, he came to India for 4 years, 5 years. He learned
loved that
everything in
story.
India.
He loved
everything in India.
He did lecture series in Hyderabad.
My favorite like myth about that was like Jesus was actually buried in India and a weed plant grew on his grave, and I'm like, yo, I was like holding on to this when I was like 9th grade. I was like, hell yeah, dude, hell yeah.
Jesus' first name was Jaswinder, actually.
Jaswinder.
You don't know, actually. The Indianization of a lot of history is definitely my dad's aversion. He does not like them. And my dad actually has an energy of like kind of liking the British and liking, and I don't know where it
There's
comes
definitely
from.
that strain too. That comes from like
It's the other
the
side of it.
overly like hyper arrogant, hyper intelligent Indian
Yeah.
uncles who are like, these other Indians don't know shit. man."
Contrarians, dude.
Yeah.
Contrarian.
They're like, you guys don't know how to
yeah.
conduct yourselves.
They saw one too many like Indian legless guys on carts or something.
Yeah.
These guys,
Yeah.
we're not the guys.
This guy needs to get it together.
Yeah, come on, man. Get some
Fucking
legs,
bum.
huh? And so my dad, again, the smartest guy that I know, but his politics on India and the past of India is so warped, and I can never talk to him about it because I wasn't born there. So he'll just play that. You don't know. What the fuck? You're stupid. And so I never had a conversation about it, but he just calcified, and he doesn't hang out with any other Indians, so he's not going to ever grow from that idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of rigid. I don't know how rigid your dad is on these kind of ideals.
Well, I mean, I think obviously in our culture, you could maybe start to have a conversation, but once the older person gets obstinate, you're like, okay.
Yeah, you have to let it go.
Because my dad, at this age, I don't think my dad can still hit me. I haven't tried it anytime soon. But instead, he learned instead of hitting me, he could be like, okay, I'll be dead soon. And you would think what you're
hit you emotionally.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
That's a word. That's a nice little emotional
That's
thumper.
much worse. Much
Thumper
worse.
to the heart. Yeah, I mean, do y'all actually talk politics? Like, do y'all have...
So to be honest, the relationship was such that my dad would tell me things about politics, and then after I went to college, now he just lets me tell him things about politics, and then he'll mention, one time Indira Gandhi's motorcade was there, and I was,
He'll give you cute details and stuff.
yeah.
Fun stories as you rocks in the chair, right? I gave her one laddu. She ate laddu. That kind of shit. Okay, that's very cute. My dad has a Mother Teresa story. He worked with Mother Teresa.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
My dad does too.
Fuck?
My dad was a doctor in India, and he used to also his Mother Teresa story. He also has like Naxal stories. He'll be like, then the communists wanted to go on strike, and then actually I should not. I will not impersonate my dad. That would actually be too much. But
I told Pranav this a lot. My dad went to Russia to
like Lamamba University,
to
I think.
University, and he became like a communist. He's like, the KGB always was helpful. Always gave directions when you needed them. Like, Dad, this is kind of crazy that you're saying this. But he knows perfect Russian and shit. He's like a total scholar in that sense.
Yeah, my dad would do things like he would write out when they do sick outs and stuff. He would say, he would always just want to be friendly with them, so he would just always write like the striking communist workers sick out days. He in general, I think there's a certain strain that combines being somewhat Europhile but also being a strong nationalist, and I think Nehru had some of that, which is he was obsessed with European thought. He was trained in the UK. Sure. He was very much an Anglophile, but then he used all of that to really assert a level of independence from colonial powers. Think about even the takeover of Goa today. We think of as just it's an inevitable thing that was going to happen. No, they would have hung on till 1999 like Hong Kong did.
Right.
Like the British did with Hong Kong.
Sure.
When they invaded, the U.S. condemned threatened actions. Britain condemned.
Right.
Soviet Union supported it. China condemned even because that was the time of the Sino-Soviet split, and India took more of the Soviet side. And it was a military invasion.
Yeah,
it was the
it's true.
invasion of sovereign territory because it was sovereign legally but not morally.
Right.
And that's something that you can't imagine a Indian leader, even the most hard-talking nationalist doing today, because Nehru got it. And even in the initial period of India could have easily become a nation filled with the little Bantustans and little we blame the Congress Party a lot for the lack of territorial integrity and the partition, but there was a world in which India has lots of like little independent, basically principalities divided on sectarian, grounds throughout the country.
Can I ask you a question about the partition? I never actually understood this. How did it, maybe you know this too, I don't know. How did it get so fucked? Was it literally just Mountbatten, like, I'm tired, and then was Jinnah just fucking stringent, like, no, these are the lines? How did it get so fucked?
He thought he called it moth-eaten Pakistan, is what he had referred to
how did it
it
get so
as. He didn't
fucked?
get what he wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would say neither side was pleased with what happened. I think that the short of it is, if you go back in time, you could have maybe had the Congress Party capitulate a little bit more and earlier to Jinnah and maintain the unity of the National Liberation movement. In the long run, I'm not sure that would have worked out either.
They were very adamant, though, right?
But
I mean, Jinnah and the Muslim League were hyper adamant about splitting off into their own country, though.
I think that developed later on as the only potential solution. And yeah, I think the British kind of made a very immediate and hasty withdrawal after fucking up a country and sowing sectarian divides for so long.
Why couldn't they have done Punjab and Bengal? What was so against that? Why couldn't they have just gone around?
Yeah, so I guess the main thing is, well, Punjab at that point would have been part of Pakistan, or it should have been part of, but just demographically, Pakistan right now is like a very Punjabi country. It would have been even more so. Bengal, I think, and also I guess the divides there were largely I'm not an expert on this, but it seems like they were more religious and communal, whereas in Bengal, the communal divides have never been as strong. So you probably could imagine a strong, independent, greater Bangladesh that is probably a successful secular, I don't know what they would be doing. Instead of sewing garments, they would probably be doing robotics or something. I think in the most arrogant way possible, they'd be talking about how they're the cultured ones, right?
I mean, I think Bangladesh now has the highest GDP in the region, though.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're also getting the most IT growth in Dhaka than in any other.
They were the first to discover the joys of plumbing and indoor toilets and things like that.
The first come on, my grandma talks about this.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that in general, once you create a framework that's built on communalism and sectarianism, then there's fear on both sides, and then there's the idea of these ancient grievances coming up. Whereas I think a better version of an Indian national liberation would foreground, this is Indian national liberation. What polity am I part of? My polity is India. It's very difficult in a multilingual country. So then maybe your second polity would be your language group, but you would try to bury down religion. I think one of the problems with India as it's developed is that it's codified caste and religion and language too, which again is the hardest thing to remove, instead of finding a way to create the fiction of a national polity. Pakistan, after independence, tried to create this polity of our national languages in Punjabi. It isn't Pashtun, it's Urdu. Everybody, now should speak this, and they now should have this Pakistani identity. Obviously, it didn't work there either, but yeah, it went to shit because it's complicated and big, multi-ethnic, essentially. It's a continent. You're trying to unify a country, And the real question is, how has it survived for so long? Relatively successfully. Pakistan, not as successful in terms of stability, but it's still surviving, whereas Yugoslavia is gone. Do we imagine a scenario where Punjab becomes independent? No. Nor should we. India is surviving in a thriving in a certain way of creating this kind of Indian polity, and it's a fiction. There's no such thing really as India. There's very little unifying about it. Even Hinduism is itself a very pluralistic, confusing
it is
mash
hyper,
of
but
religion,
I think this is what people rely on to certainly like the BJP or right-wing elements, right? This is what they rely on to say. Well, before anything else, this was a thing that unified people north to south, right? Was at least this belief in Hindu Dharma, basically, right? Even though the traditions change here and there and like different deities and blah, 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 different movements, they always relied on that, right?
Well,
and then, of course, they look at like the Marathas and the Mauryas and they look, no, we had geographic contiguity and all that stuff, right? So there is that, but...
Well, they're basically right about the past in terms of, I watch you get a socialist on saying the BJP is right something, but about the past, yes, Hinduism, like broadly construed as a set of beliefs,
just like dharmic,
it was dominant in South Asia as a whole, and the question is what you do with that past,
right.
You know what I mean? And so, and also to some degree, like I'm a socialist, but also a classic liberal in that I think as the government should relate to its citizens. In India, they should relate as individual citizens with a certain fixed set of rights, not as communal entities that have communal leaders.
Right.
So you see this all over the place, and it's big in countries in Europe that do this like enforced multiculturalism.
Yeah.
And their view of multiculturalism is, okay, the Muslims are acting up in London. Let me find their leader. Let me talk to this like imam, whatever. And what you're doing is just reinforcing the structure that exists. Like I don't think. The Indian government should do outreach to the Muslim community as such, mediated through leaders. I think they should just treat people as citizens with certain rights and so on, right?
That's weird, like almost like a intense millet system where they're like, okay, well, let's get everyone's just fucking their thing, and then everyone has their little tribal leaders.
The best thing about Hinduism is that we don't have a pope.
Right.
Centralized.
We don't have anyone who could send us on a fatwa or crusade or whatever else.
Isn't that the idea now?
Not
is
really,
to
because nobody.
popify some people?
That's the thing. Nobody really steps in as like the grand authority of.
No, I'm saying the
Hindus.
BJP-ness of it. Aren't they trying to like exaltify some?
It's the BJP is trying to do a thing where it's like this is the
Hindu.
first time where they've had political supremacy as well as had like the religious majority as well as now also political supremacy, right, in the country. It's like a unified
How did
thing.
the Congress party fuck it up? I feel like they were so good for
It's
so
just
long.
like dynastic corruption. They weren't good.
That hasn't like had the power for so long, but I guess.
So I think, I mean, to the extent we have like a pope, it's these little like gurus and
there's like a million little popes in
you
India.
You have a million different like Sai Baba 3.0,
Yeah,
4.0,
exactly.
whatever. You can kind of just
How to use iPhone 11? yeah, exactly.
Congress Party just went down the way big ruling parties lead a country from basically before independence all the way through the 90s. So the real question, and then again, recently, I think they're one of their more successful governments recently. So the real question is like, how were they in power for most of the last century without a opposition? Also, how did the BJP become not just a weird exception? Like during the Vajpayee years, you'd be like, okay, now there's occasionally going to be a second party come in. How did it become this dominant party? And I think a lot has to do with as the Congress Party got weaker, regional parties got stronger, and these regional parties can now enter into bloc or alliance with the BJP. And the BJP is essentially the regional party of the most important and largest region in the country. Right. So they have this solid voting bloc. And to be honest, like I think have sold the Indian people a bill of goods about economic success, which has not happened under the BJP, and also on projecting strength abroad, which really hasn't happened either. Also, what happened, like some Chinese guys with like sticks, that's what happens. Like, whereas if you like, not that I approve of like these like what I would consider inter-imperialist
video of the Indian guy beating someone up. Look, Indian strength.
No, but not that I approve of like I don't think anyone wants the return of the Indo-Pak wars and all the devastation, whatever else. But if you look at the actual martial record of the Congress Party, you have like a stalemate, the liberation of Goa, which 100% I approve of. You have huge successes in Indo-Pak War, 65 is considered a stalemate, but a strategic Indian victory. And then 71, just a very, knockout blow that has led to Bangladeshi, independence. And that is an actual martial tradition. And if you like Indian growth rates, like we now get used to just thinking about the 80s and 90s and kind of like the decline of the Congress Party. But India used to be a country that had mass famine all the time, regularly. That policy almost made worse. Like India got rid of mass famine in its immediate independence period. It became like a legitimate military power. It charted a course independent from the U.S. and Britain.
And this is after they became a country.
Yeah, a lot of this is like very.
So who are these dynamic as individuals that were just ready to go from the moment it got started?
So to be honest, a lot of it was just part of it's like new technology, like new like fertilizing techniques, and the Green Revolution, whatever. But also it took a country to try to like a leadership to actually try to build the infrastructure projects of a uniting country, even little things that we take for granted, kind of like the promotion of like Hindi and stuff like that. It's all kind of the trying to create a national project. And a lot of this was the leadership of the Congress Party. A lot of this is around Nehru. In the end, they created a system that didn't work as well as it maybe could have because, one, it was very bureaucratic. This is kind of the license Raj stuff that people talk about where, I wanted to get a telephone in 1989 and I had to like pay bribe a guy. One time one of my uncles came to the U.S. in the early 90s. My dad got pulled over for a ticket and he just my uncle pulled out his wallet. And then it was, my dad's like, what the fuck? They're going to shoot you.
It was the same system.
Yeah. But then my uncle has since then claimed that he thought he was just going to pay the ticket. He wasn't really trying to bribe the cop, but everybody in the car claims that he was trying to like bribe the cop.
A little bribe action.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, but the system kind of didn't work in that Indian like capitalists, like the Tata Motors people, all these like big Indian industrialists, they wanted help from the state as far as like the carrot, like give me a subsidy, give me some help. I can't compete with Europe, so cut off trade with this country, cut off imports, and help me build up my industry.
And this is the beginning. This is like the 40s,
This
50s.
is the 40s, 50s, 60s. So they kind of had this import substitution like model, but they would just subsidize. They wouldn't ever listen to the state. If the state was ever like, you're building this inefficient, cheap products that Indian people are stuck with, they just have to buy. We want you to invest in this, or we have this big national plan. We want you to do this or that. So they didn't use the stick of telling them what to do. They just gave them kind of handouts. So in the end, like Indian manufactured goods were just like shitty and inferior. Yeah. And actually, if you had a more open free market economy, you might have had a situation where Indian producers in the short term were just totally demolished, but in the long term, they adapted and found whatever their comparative advantage was and kind of did whatever. But what you did in South Korea was a mix of both, where you decided what sectors to open and when, but you also really disciplined capitalists, businessmen. Like there's stories of like people, I don't think anyone was actually killed, but like sentenced to death for like petty corruption and stuff.
Absolutely. They do that in China as well.
South Korea dictatorship, yeah.
Right.
You kind of need both the carrots and the sticks, but in India it was like the worst of both worlds. It was like bad socialism and that it couldn't actually deliver. In China, you got really good healthcare and education.
Yeah.
A lot of other bad stuff, but really good healthcare and
education. Has the South Korean
education.
system eventually been failing recently because of the Kai balls, whatever? They got so conglomerized that now they're not even, they're so rigid?
Yeah,
that's my understanding of
that's
it.
Like Japan and some degree Korea has had that problem, some degree Taiwan, but that's a problem of now development. Now they're like,
that's a good problem.
Yeah. How do you go from being the 12th richest country in the world to being the first, as opposed to like how do you like introduce like
make sandals that don't suck?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Right.
Or again like India, like we shouldn't take for granted that India had to be this poor for this long. Like the takeoff of India, like recently, you could have imagined a scenario where India grew at 5-6% instead of 4%. In many of these years. So I think there is a version of India that looks
like
more
20
like
years
South
of
Korea.
dictatorship. Like he wanted that immediately upon independence to kind of do these kinds of things.
I'm not sure it would have worked completely. I would say that like as a developmental state, the Soviet Union, the Russian trajectory was going to be the trajectory to like a mid to low level country, and the act, like what happened through Soviet central planning, like the initial years of catching up with the West and building industry, was on material terms a huge success. Same with Japan, whatever. There's been a few like leaps where you could break your developmental trajectory, and then obviously the problem with it was like the moral. We have to kind of set aside for thinking about these different kind of models the moral and ethical part of so in other words, a dictatorship might have worked better at an economic level, but you didn't really need a dictatorship to have a well-functioning government. But there's also a version of the Indian experience where its independence is like the independence of like many of the nations in sub-Saharan Africa, other places where you have coups left and right.
For sure.
You have just total disorder. You have complete
India is very big and very diverse
it's in the middle.
too.
It's in the middle.
Very tough. It's not South Korea where it's like extremely homogeneous and so on, where you can have that kind of a dictatorship.
That's a question. Just
go
about this. So you were talking about how like the subsidies in the beginning of the state were kind of helping, but then really did not. But then are you trying to say that if there weren't subsidies, that possibly it would be an Africa-like situation where there's a lot more instability?
What I was saying is that like the Indian model was very much carrots and no sticks. It would have been better to have carrots and sticks.
Right.
I would still say there were significant infrastructural developments and other developments made. There was significant state support in the transformation of Indian agriculture that ended famine. Obviously, Indian development has just been uneven, so we have very advanced polytechnical institutes, but we don't have great primary education, and don't have the kind of a basis of healthcare in rural areas and other places. So the fair comparison isn't really India to maybe South Korea or Taiwan, though I think there is something to say about Indian industry and their industry. But India and China.
Right.
China has been far more successful, even in the Mao years, even in the very, very early extreme period of communist rule, at establishing baselines for one, ending famine, like was done in India also. After one really terrible famine that was manufactured by
there's
communist
famines,
policy.
And then there's that second level.
But also like creating an infrastructure of basic healthcare and education. In part, it was ideologically rooted in just the fact that the Chinese ruling classes, the Chinese Communist Party, their authority rests in giving things to their people. Like they're like, all right, we're in charge and we're nominally, we're communists. In Mao's time, they're really, communist. So we have to actually deliver on this like social welfare. Yeah. And now it's taking part, like a part of this like takeoff of how does China go from being like the entity that produces cheap shit for the world to now it gets to produce like really advanced high-tech stuff. It has a highly educated workforce. And if you compare like the infant mortality rates of China and India, if you compare life expectancy, it's like we have a great famine like every couple years by comparison. And yeah, I think it's really, really, there was definitely better roads taken. So, India is like a 5 out of 10, I would say, as a country.
Barely fuckable.
Sure.
Yeah.
Barely fuckable.
Really? So
in the dark, maybe.
You have low standards.
Barely fuckable.
Listen,
5 out of 10?
You're in New York. I mean, I'm going to fuck a 5. Yeah.
It's a New York 5. Hey.
Yeah.
5 out of 10. But Bhaskar, I want to talk to you about you a little bit because you're a socialist, right? Do you consider yourself?
Yeah, of course.
You're a Marxist. You are the editor of a very prominent socialist magazine, Jacobin magazines, very well known. You guys also do like classes and stuff like that too, I believe. How did you come into this, basically? Like, how did you become the maven of Marxism in Brooklyn?
In my family background, it was like largely, my extended family especially, were largely like working class. My dad's basically a D-class professional. So when he came to the U.S., we didn't have that much. Way
to shit on your dad.
What's that?
Way to like totally shit on your dad right now.
No, I mean,
my dad was a dumb fuck.
No.
He was on the D list.
My dad moved to the U.S. when he was 40, and he basically didn't have anything. And also, he didn't really intentionally move. It was kind of like a
you keep shitting on him. You keep like
my dad
actually washed up on
my dad basically just rolled everyone here without a clear plan. That's all I'm going to say. And it was D-class in that he was a professional in the Caribbean, but he wanted to move to the U.S. and he obviously at that point in his life couldn't, he was 39, I guess, when he came over. Couldn't get quickly recredentialized. So instead, he settled for being like a white-collar worker, like a hospital administration instead of like a doctor. He was fine with that. And my mom, didn't have like credentials. So she eventually, found work basically doing like telemarketing, but like she always stresses business to business,
B2B, baby, B2B.
Yeah.
Keep it classy.
I know this one.
But shitty like hourly work and whatever, and they had 5 kids. So my dad. This is almost it's a story I'll say just because it's your podcast and no one will hear this inappropriate thing. I'm just kidding.
Oh sure. Oh wow. Roasting your dad and now us. Damn, bro.
No. But my dad.
I get this E-list podcast going where it was stupid.
My dad was like I'm like, Dad, how'd you end up in New York? He's like, well, I came over to New Jersey, and I was in like East Orange, like in the Newark area of New Jersey, and that's where your mom's family, like a lot of them live, but it's a bad area. I didn't really want my kids in that area. So then I looked around. I spoke to this nice Jewish man. He didn't. This is right who, and I said, you're so good at educating your children. Like the way he describes like a stranger, like where should I move? I want to educate my children. So the guy told him like Long Island or Westchester. So on this man's advice, my dad like looked in a penny saver and just like we hopped around between like in Austining, like Pleasantville, like a lot of these like small towns in Westchester, we just rent. And the idea is like actually very logical. This advice that he got from this kindly Jewish man. Which is like houses are expensive because mortgages are expensive and property tax is expensive, but you could like probably rent into like a home and get access to a very good welfare state, get access to an awesome school district, whatever else. Technically the property tax kind of baked into the rent, but it doesn't really work out that way exactly. So we were renting a house for like not great, accommodations. I get my own room till I was like 13 or 14 or whatever.
You realize how lucky you were that you got a Jewish man who gave you actual
know.
advice.
Yeah.
You could have ended up with side curls very quick, dude. You could've been-
yeah.
Oh,
no. I mean, this wasn't an acidic. No, I mean, he probably found a nice, like,
He's a Jewish doctor, presumably.
Yeah, I'm sure. So basically we rented into this school district. I'm by far the youngest of my siblings. I was born in 89. Most of my siblings are some of them are half siblings, but they're 73, 74, 76. And then my sister close to me is 85. So the three of them that were born in the 70s, didn't end up going to college. My sister, in combination, because my family, my mom put even though she didn't have formal education to a great degree, put such an emphasis on like education, like, and also like, I'm gonna literally beat you unless you do your summer homework. Yeah. So I would like, I would let my friends know like, oh, I got to do my summer homework. They're like, what summer homework?
I know, dude. I know.
People love breaks growing up.
Yeah.
Break.
Yeah.
I'm like, my mom's gonna break me.
I'm gonna
Exactly.
break. It was torment.
Yeah.
She was
pure
terrifying.
torture.
Can I ask you this? So again, this culture of education is being started, right? You're obviously fucking knowledgeable as fuck. How did you, again, the magazine, how did you come across that?
So in other words, I realized like there's many ways that I could take the fact that I had much more educational success than my siblings or whatever, besides for, my closest sibling to me. And part of that is like, oh, I'm smarter or whatever. But obviously it's clear to me that I grew up in the U.S., which is a big advantage. I'm the only one kind of
And you're
in
the
my
baby,
generation.
too.
Oh, yeah, the youngest of 5. And also I'm the youngest of my... Like, I have something like close to 80 first cousins. I'm like the second youngest of them.
Island people be fucking. Dude. Always fucking.
Well, we work the land. We work the land. We need a labor. We need a labor. Yeah. No, seriously.
That's true.
That's code for
I guess
let's make a-
that's why they have us. Is to vacuum and shit. We were definitely labor.
We need a shovel user.
Exactly. So in other words, I realized...
And the welfare state is having kids to take care of you.
Well, the equation for me, I realized that it was the welfare state primarily. In other words, like I had access to really good, like from, my parents would work late, but from basically 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., I was like with the state.
Right.
If you count after school stuff, if you count the local public library, I was with the state.
Food was paid for? Lunch was paid for?
Like a couple years. Well, only when we qualified, because now it wasn't universal like it is.
Sure.
It is now. But like in general, like you kind of benefit from the welfare state. You benefit from like certain opportunities afforded to you by not having a accent or other things that could be barriers to certain, or might direct you to a certain technical type of work. I imagine if I came over, even though I was super smart, 13 years old with an accent, they would probably be like, oh, you should do something in STEM. I probably would have been much better. Instead, like, I pursued humanities.
A list of hotels to.
So the role of the state was important to me, and kind of being like, all right, I'm a social democrat. I believe in having a big welfare state. Then I just discovered, like, Marx.
What were the levers, though,
and,
of the social welfare state that you benefited from specifically, though?
Well, I would just say, like, having very, very high quality public education, and also public libraries, where I discovered, Marx and Engels and the rest, in part because...
And the whole gang.
Westchester has a lot of red diaper babies. It has a lot of, like, upwardly mobile Jews whose, I'm literally stereotyping because I know like 20 people that fit this description whose parents were communists,
Right.
and moved on up in the world and were like orthodontists and like in like Briarcliff Manor, and would donate books to the local library. There's so much
so funny
red
to have a
literature in
communist
rich
phase,
suburbs.
you know?
Yeah, rich suburbs in the New York metropolitan area are just like loaded with
Totally true.
red diaper baby donation books. I've read like Irving Howe and Isaac Deutscher and like so I kind of, and in a way I
Those
also
were the kids' books back then.
those are the kids' books. I was reading that books from age 13, 14. In a weird way, I also identified closely with a certain, at a biographical level or whatever. I actually identified more with, like, rather than the regular, like, like American kind of like, farmer fucking Sam tradition, whatever. Obviously, I wouldn't identify with that Protestant, like, I'm fucking.
Well, of course
I just love your life right now because, again, you had a blue collar kind of contingent to your family, or like a working class that weren't going to college, and you were like a little baby with Das Kapital, just fucking.
Yeah, it was like the little engine that could cart away the bourgeoisie to camps,
It's like, I love that demarcation or that sort of juxtaposition. Okay, so then you're growing up, you're in this space, you're finding the value in this, and then again, you're in college at some point, right? I getting ideas in there.
Yeah, so basically, I was already a member. I joined at age 17, joined the Democratic Socialists of America.
Damn,
you're
in there.
So
at
by
17.
Yeah,
Jeez,
17
this is all
I joined,
based on the like hand-me-down literature of like Jewish
Hand-me-down literature.
Marxists from
Exactly.
Manhattan who all got out of their skateboarding commie phase and became orthodontists. And they're like,
exactly.
Who knows the hell that we're actually wreaking by donating these books to the library?
Exactly.
Just a kid. Hey.
Yeah,
These people are not fighting you tooth and nail. I can guarantee you.
Oh, yeah, no. My only criticism of them at the time was I'm like, I would always tell my Jewish friends, I would like respect the ones who didn't eat pork more because they're like, you don't believe in God or whatever. Yeah, but I don't want to be the first. Like, I don't want to be the first to eat beef. Like, who knows what it'll do to me? I'll probably get a fucking heart attack.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I don't know. Like,
It'll do something fucked up to your body.
You might not be Muslim, but your liver could be. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
exactly.
You don't know
Exactly.
You don't know your body. I feel you. I love that superstition.
And also, I do feel like once you break it, you just go to the extreme. Like, I know plenty of even left-wing communists, like Pakistani friends of mine, who like just don't touch a drop of liquor ever. And then when they're 24, often with me, they're like, yeah, one time. And then now they're fucking drunkards. And I'm like, I don't want to.
So many Muslim friends I have who are just like, they'll get fucking super stoned, they fuck, they drink tons of alcohol, but they're like, no pork. No, I don't fuck with pork, bro.
That's like me with beef.
Yeah. Also, the thing is, like, with fucking and drinking, it's more evil, and with pork, it's more disgusting. And so there's like a little bit of inculcation of like, pork is shit. It's actual poop. It's
the
literal
tastiest
poop.
of all the meats.
It's
It has
by
more
far the
variety.
best.
Soprasada does not taste like prosciutto, but beef tastes like beef all the way around. So it's like a different thing.
Yeah, it seems fine. Also, like the way Americans cook beef, it's just like it's so unappetizing. It's just like the color and the whatever. I don't know.
Sure.
Like pork
American
is different.
meat is what's going on there? It's barely meat. Yeah.
But anyway, I become a social democrat first, then kind of a Marxist. Then I kind of melded into my politics today, which is intellectually, I'm familiar with very, very kind of like Marxist traditions and whatnot. But fundamentally, I think the goal of politics is to improve people's lives to the better in the here and now. Mm-hmm. So I would never say no to Medicare for all in favor of, seizing the means of production. I think the two are actually related in the sense that, like, if you don't have the power to get one, you're not going to have the power to get the other much more difficult thing.
I mean, what is up with the state of the left, though, today? Because for me, I used to consider myself like a pretty ardent leftist, and I find them very annoying in general, though, right? Because there's so much ideological purity that happens there. And really, one thing is, I know theory is a really huge thing, right, for Marxists, but it's like, how do you expect the proletariat to have the leisure to actually read theory, digest theory without some kind of vanguard that inevitably does create some kind of not great kind of social hierarchy, right?
Well, I think fundamentally, the left traditionally has been led by workers themselves in the international context. So it's hard to... So basically today we just don't really have much of a left. We have little subcultures, and subcultures are fucking annoying. If you ever are a fan of Fleetwood Mac and you end up on the Fleetwood Mac Reddit, you're going to get into weird sectarian disputes about that. Right. Like there's weird sectarian things that happen in groups with low stakes but high amounts of information about one topic, and they're just parsing, whatever. When the left actually gets to power, often it's like, the stakes are much higher, which both can lead to bigger disasters, but also it generally leads to like less small disasters in the sense of like, if the thing at stake is who gets to be Minister of Health in a social democratic government, then people are going to probably be a little like careful about blowing the whole thing up, blowing the whole government up in a dispute.
Right. What do you feel like the neoliberals have kind of jujitsu'd the left though with like identity politics specifically? I mean, I'm sure you have you know what I mean? It's like, it's a very bizarre state of affairs because there isn't really any talk of class struggle. There was a very brief moment during COVID when there was. It really all dissipated, I think, in a lot of ways with what was happening with the protests, with the George Floyd BLM stuff and all that. And there was a lot of other, all kinds of elements coming in there, right? Anarchist elements, Marxists, da. But it just feels like in general, it's all been subsumed by identity. Like,
yeah,
that's the whole thing.
I don't think it was even a plot so much as the fact that the existing left, the people who radicalized, were just in general middle-class people.
Right.
And either they were working-class people that got a college education and kind of like moved up, or they're like the sons and daughters of like rich people who kind of got declassed a little bit. But either way, like they are removed from working-class milieus. And for that reason, they can't realize that for the vast majority of Americans, day-to-day experience is actually, in a good way, not that racialized.
Right.
Like whether you're a black worker, you're Latino, you're white, you're miscellaneous. Like in any case, like
you're gonna get canceled for all the people you left out. I just
wait,
hope you know.
you want? I did miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Wait, but
You miscellaneous.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a real miscellaneous fetish. I don't know if I've
with
told
the hard double L too.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Shit.
No,
I only fuck miscellaneous
You want
girls.
the same things. You want the same things.
Miscellaneous
like,
vibes.
Yeah, you want miscellaneous vibes.
Yeah, that's
you
a
want
new term,
healthcare.
too.
You want education. You want a better life for your children. You want basic security. You want a good job. You care about the economy. In other words, like the actual needs and desires and articulations of people in America are completely universal. And the policies that I think would improve lives for most people are completely universal, yet the left feels a need to talk about these universal needs and feelings and demands and these universal solutions in very racialized ways. Like, let's talk about universal healthcare as a way to reduce, violence against Asians or whatever. It's just a bizarre way.
How much of
it's
it
all
is-
interest group politics.
How much of it is it like overeducation of the upper middle class and the idea of like, all these ideals are being fed, but none of the actual understanding of the people that are being affected by it?
Yeah, and also I think
This
that,
is kind of
again,
what I was talking
Right,
about.
right.
Like, there's definitely a
Right.
gap there, right? It requires a certain amount of leisure to get through the canon of Marx. Right? I've only read the Communist Manifesto and what the Critique of German Philosophy, I think it's called. Right? It's a long essay, maybe. Right? Those are the only thing because I feel like you need to really devote yourself to Marx to really understand Marx in his totality.
I don't think so, in the sense that, like, you don't really need to read Marx necessarily to understand Marx. And I think even if you're an activist or organizer, you don't really need to read Marx. And if anything, you should have Marx more in your bones than in your mouth. What it is instead
Hot.
of
Love
thinking
it.
about,
I'm hard.
but not that kind of bone.
No.
You said mouth. That's what got us.
Right.
Das Boner is
Marx
getting
in Marx's mouth.
My means of production are getting very, very strong right
My
now.
means of reproduction.
But like what you do need to, I think, have a sense of is a basic materialist worldview, which is just kind of like, all right, people who don't have enough shit want more shit. People who are exploited or oppressed, if given a better alternative that they can safely get to, would rather be less oppressed and less exploited. And that the main problem is people have very unequal capacities to resist. So in other words, why don't more people go on strike? Well, people need their jobs. And they know that, hey, it's pretty bad at this job, but it's better than having no job.
Right.
So just kind of like applying that common sense to politics is kind of how I think about politics more than having to quote Marx. And I think Marx was trying to apply certain common senses about history. So saying like history is determined by this combination of the existing mode of production, kind of like how you make shit, and the existing means of production, how you direct people who are participating in this economic system. Like is it a feudal system? Is it a capitalist system? Whatever else. This is kind of just like common sense of like, we're going to like try to understand society by focusing not on culture and other stuff, but on the economic base. And we're going to try to examine it and like scientifically dissect the economic base. So it's not meant to explain everything. Like Marxism cannot explain, and I'm sure there's a cultural studies essay trying to do it this way, but it shouldn't explain like the sex appeal of blue jeans, right?
Right.
Like, but it should explain like why the spoils of society seem to be going to just this handful of rich people and not everyone else more generally. Like it should try, which is pertinent.
Seems to be that Marxism in general, that idea is sort of incomplete. If you're just reducing it to its kind of base levels without the culture, without the history of it, isn't that taking away of like a very large portion of what's important in terms of policy construction, or no?
I think no, in the sense that the way I would put it,
A Marxist would have to say no, though, right? That's the whole point of Marxism.
I think a lot of Marxists
it's a purely
nowadays are
materialist.
obsessed.
I'm not coming from any knowledge. This is just my ideas.
Trust me, old school materialist Marxists are a dying breed. People want to tell you how to use Marxism to understand like Japanese interpretive dance or whatever. What I would say is Marxism explains vulgar Marxism, what I just laid out, like a very crude variant of it, explains about 90% of the world, yet for some reason social sciences is obsessed with the other 10%. So like I think it explains pertinent facts about the world, and I think generally it's safe to say that culture is not the way in which these demands in life and whatever else culture doesn't mediate. I think culture transmits, if that makes a difference. Let me give you like a more concrete example. Okay, so it used to be that, let's say, Indian Marxists or other Marxists used to have an understanding of the world that would say, okay, capitalism is slowly going to make everything look like European capitalist, whatever. It's gonna, change culture, and it's gonna like fundamentally like move India, for better or worse, towards a form of like European modernity, right?
Right.
And that's what like some people interpret Marxism as saying. This economic system, capitalism, is gonna take over culture and change and kind of McDonaldify, everything. But what real Marxism would say is capitalism will only destroy everything that interferes with its ability to accumulate. So in other words, if you are working in a factory in a sari and you're producing just as much widgets as someone working in a factory in a suit or in a jumpsuit or whatever, like there's no need for capitalism to get rid of your sari.
For sure.
The culture still exists and it still mediates and shapes how things are expressed.
Okay, yeah.
But if a part of your culture ever interfered with production, it would go away.
Not sorry.
Yeah, like it's the Spanish are definitely not siesting.
I'm working here.
They're not siesting,
Come on, baby.
I don't know if they are.
No.
But
So
like the Irish
saying.
now probably mostly drink on the weekends. Like I actually don't know.
Right.
But,
Right.
Well, I mean, why haven't the left? I mean, here's the thing, though, is like it's very a despondent situation for the left here, though. You know what I mean? Like, it's very like you look at like the Squad, right? Like when they came in, everybody was like, "Yay, the Squad, AOC," and now it's like they've been very disappointing. I'd say for most people on the left.
Oh yeah,
far
I
left,
think they've been very disappointing.
Like they're a bunch of fucking clowns, right?
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah. Say stupid whore.
No drinks were provided with me. No, but I think in general, one, they're just a handful of people in a big Congress. Secondly, they suffer from a lot of the same problems as the contemporary left, in which the way I would describe it is this: the Squad has the right demands that I actually think could help America. They just communicate their demands that I think could help in America in often very stupid and counterproductive ways.
That's all the left now, right?
But the right, on the other hand, I think is both kind of like buffoonish in how they communicate and also have like really bad plans for America.
For sure.
So between the two, I'd rather stick with the group that at least has like the programmatic vision. But I just wish there was a version of the Squad that was more like Bernie, more like the original, like what Bernie was trying to do is basically
like those nice old Jewish men who gave you their little
Exactly.
childhood Marxist book.
But
Read this,
Bernie
He's
never
like Harry Anslinger, or like his grandma died of opium or something. So he's like, no opium at all in the world. So it's like very deep childhood shit going on.
And also, you should say the same thing over and over again. Like, in other words, politics is actually pretty simple. You find the 10 most pertinent issues for you, and then you look and see what the 10 most pertinent issues for your potential voters are. And then you look if there's overlap, and you hammer home the same thing over and over again. If I was elected a president, if I was running Joe Biden, and I was doing Build Back Better, it would just be about like two things. It would be like, oh, this bill is about this and this. It wouldn't be about a million fucking things. Same thing, like if I was running for president, it would just be about, yeah, what are you going to do for America? We're going to get Medicare for all.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
or
right.
we're going to get like a big job stimulus, whatever. And then if someone says, what about this? What about this? What about this obscure cultural issue or that? You know, I would just be like maybe, but no, probably not. We're going to do one thing.
Sure.
And I think there's a simplicity of politics they're missing, because everything, like you listen to AOC's Instagram, like her. Sorry, I'm not on Instagram. I don't know how it works. The video thing? The movie
Yes, you
Instagram.
never followed me back,
totally
bitch.
got
I
you.
know.
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah. My fiance runs my Instagram. But,
She's doing a terrible job. Okay.
I tell her to
Runs
like
your
no.
Instagram. Who are you that you need an Instagram?
Look at this glamorous Marxist with an in-house PR agency.
She basically like I decided to start it, but I didn't like keep using it. But then I was like, oh fuck, well people would think I'm just not liking their shit. So I just tell her like scroll through like dogs and babies. Dogs and babies.
Forced to wear a sorry
yeah.
too, I'm sure. You know what I'm saying? While she's doing
Put
it.
on a sorry.
Put on a
while you're
sorry,
doing it.
bitch. For my Instagram.
You know, if it helped her produce, then maybe I'd be the market imperative would make me. But
no clothes happens to help in this case.
Karl Marx said this. That's interesting. I could talk forever. I do have shows I gotta get to at some point. Last thing I just want to ask: what's in your fucking horizon? What are you fucking doing next for the magazine? Are you trying to expand it in some other countries? Like what's going on with that?
What's going on with the revolution, dude?
Yeah, man.
Where's it happening?
Where should I be right now? Who should I shoot?
We publish actually through our franchises in like 4 or 5 different languages, actually 5 counting English. So we reach around 80,000 people in the U.S. through the print magazine. Though like 10,000 of those are on newsstands and nobody really reads them, so we recycle them.
Oh shit!
But generally, you know, we print 80,000 copies, and yeah, I guess basically we're in a period that's going to be a bit of a rut, I think, for the left more generally. So it's important for us to define what the left is about, and the left is about giving more material security, but also more freedom to ordinary people. Like if you're stuck in a job where you're working 9-10 hours a day, the left wants you to have more freedom. We want you to work 7 to 8 hours a day. We want you to have more bargaining power. We want you to have a welfare state to rely on. It's really like that simple. Yet I think a lot of progressive politicians are making a simple message that's primarily about class into a very confusing and fundamentally unappealing message. It's about, not being offensive.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Sure. That's I'm definitely eating that oatmeal, man. What you're
Right.
putting down. You're the fucking man, dude. Truly.
Thanks for coming on.
I really appreciate it.
You should
Really
come back
appreciate it.
sometime
Yeah.
so we can keep talking about other things. We went into a huge Indian history tear at the
Sure.
beginning.
Yeah,
I was like, that was a big chunk.
Love. You're fucking seriously.
Where can people find you?
You should
And your
just
wife.
subscribe to Jacobin. Do not
Just
follow me
subscribe
on
to
Instagram.
Jacobin.
Just
What
subscribe
about
to
Twitter?
Jacobin. Don't follow me on Twitter either. Really,
Jesus
but, yeah, just subscribe to Jacobin.
A true Marxist.
Bhaskar Sunkara.
A true Marxist.
Subscribe to Jacobin Magazine, guys. Remember also to subscribe to Mango Bay on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Write us a review. Subscribe to the Patreon. Usama, anything else?
That's it, man.
Viva la Revolution.
Viva la Revolution.
We love
All
you
day.
guys. Thank you.
Come
Come
again.
again. Your Mango Bay.